So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tina Thomas, and I am the CEO of the Edmonton Community Foundation. I'd like to welcome you to the 2023 Annual Luncheon. I am excited to see so many familiar but also new faces. And for many of you, the new face is mine. It is my first time as CEO, but it's not my first time to this luncheon, so I'm really appreciative to be here. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us in person. We have over 600 people that have registered for this event, which is the first time that we have had a sellout for the event. Thank you, Cassandra. She's letting me know I'm not loud enough in the back. All right. I really could not be more grateful to be standing here in front of such a great room and serving such a great organization. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered in Treaty 6 territory and in the Region 4 of Métis Nation of Alberta. June is Indigenous History Month in Canada, and it's time to recognize the rich history, heritage, resilience, diversity of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This lovely day and week makes me reflect on where I live. Treaty 6 covers almost 310,000 square kilometers across the central parts of what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan, east of the mountains between the Athabasca and the Saskatchewan rivers. If you combined Belgium, Austria, Switzerland, you'd still have to add half of Ireland to come up with equivalent territory. I am thankful to live in this beautiful place that has been home to so many and will be home to so many in the future. Before we have lunch, I would like to introduce the Alberta Chinese Dance Association, who will be performing in lieu of grace. You'll see lunch has been placed on your tables already, and you'll have lots of time to eat it after the performance. After they are done, I will be up at around 12:15 to continue with the program. The Alberta Chinese Dance Association is a nonprofit organization founded in 2010 whose mission is to promote traditional heritage of Chinese dance, arts, and culture through learning, creativity, and performance. Please welcome Susanna Track and Macy Pollock, who will be performing Ling Zhu, or The Butterfly Lovers, a story that was selected as one of China's 4 great folklores by the folklore movement in the 1920s. Please join me in welcoming them. Hello again, everyone. I want to keep us on time, so we're going to get going with the program. So please continue to enjoy your lunch as we go along. We are delighted to have many special guests in the room, but a couple that I'll introduce. Friend and former ECF board member, Councillor Karen Tang, is with us, as well as of course, our speaker today, Dr. Irshad Manji. I would like to welcome now Elisa Hung to the stage. She is the incoming Vice Chair of the Edmonton Community Foundation Board of Directors, and she is going to say a few words about this year's board.
Thank you, Tina. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Tina shared, my name is Elisa Hung, and I have the honor of serving as Vice Chair of the Edmonton Community Foundation Board of Directors. 2023 marks the 34th year anniversary for the Edmonton Community Foundation. Our organization officially began in 1989, thanks to the generosity of three families who recognized the importance of long-term and sustainable funding for the charitable sector. John and Barbara Poole, George and Ray Poole, and Robert and Shirley Stollery. Over the years, ECF and our ability to support community partners has grown stronger thanks to all of you, and thousands of Edmontonians from all backgrounds and with a variety of interests. Now, before I introduce this year's board, I'd like to acknowledge our outgoing board members, who we greatly appreciated for their work during their terms. Now, goodbye is a little bit too emotional for me, so instead, this year, we would like to say thank you and best wishes to former board chair, Zara Somani, former board vice chair and chair of the Alberta Social Enterprise Fund, Teresa Costin, Jacqueline Cardinal, and Gina Bunto. We truly appreciate your dedication and hard work, particularly with your leadership and commitment during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, at this time, At this time, I would like to introduce the board for 2023 and 2024, including 4 new board members. I would ask that you please hold your applause until the end. Starting with our current board officers. Board Chair Manel Sturkle, who sends her regrets as she wasn't able to join us today. Myself, Elisa Hung, as Vice Chair, and Board Secretary Marshall Schachter. I'd also like to recognize our returning directors who are featured on the screens. Now, as I mentioned, we are pleased to welcome 4 new board members this year. First, we have Jonathan Chia, former CFO of Melcor Developments and the CEO of McLab Development Group, and now an entrepreneur and consultant. He most recently served 9 years on the Stollery Children's Hospital Board, including chairing several committees. Second, we have Sam Narayan, partner and president of Ever Real Estate Development Group. Sam is the founder of the Ever Excellence Foundation, a new fund with ECF, as well as an active member of the Edmonton Commercial Real Estate Development Association. We also have Gail Stepaniak-Kaber, who comes to us with 24 years of governance experience in public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Gail currently serves on the Travel Alberta, Edmonton Global, and Cashco Financial Boards, and she is also the former Purpose and Innovation Officer at Service Credit Union and the founder of Trinity Solutions. And finally, Sherilyn Trumpeter. Sherilyn is using her extensive experience in international partnerships, working in senior positions with both the University of Alberta and Concordia, and now as the founder of MT Consulting Group, focused on creating diverse and inclusive workplaces. Welcome to you all. And of course, demonstrating their ongoing love of community, we are also privileged to have several former board directors and board chairs joining us for lunch today as well. And our former CEO, Martin Garber-Conrad. Now, if I could please ask the current and former board members to please stand and be recognized for your dedication and contributions to the ECF, and more importantly, to the Edmonton community. Thank you, everyone. I'll turn it over back to Tina.
Thank you, Elisa. As we all know, 2022 was a difficult year economically, but we also know that that is the time when support is most needed. Our full financial statements have recently been made available online as well as in our office, but I'd like to take some time to go through a few of the key statistics from the last fiscal year. In 2022, our fund balance was $728 million, which is a slight decrease from 2021. I know it's so huge and it's hard to believe that that is a slight decrease, but I'll get over that. Despite this decrease, ECF has distributed $34 million to 800 charities and 650 students. That's an increase of $4 million over the previous year and a magnitude of difference over the $1 million we were able to grant in 1989. Almost 10% of our grantees in 2022 were first time. There's a couple I'd like to highlight. The Society of Strathcona Youth Justice, which uses restorative justice to foster accountability and growth among youth facing criminal charges. We also have Fast and Female Supporting Women in Sport. They found that over a third of girls stopped playing sports by the time they turned 16. And so they wanted to stop that, and they're focused on girls between the ages of 14 to help them keep engaged with sports. We also saw that more than $650,000 was granted to support refugees impacted by conflicts around the world. And support for Indigenous-led and Indigenous-serving organizations grew to almost $2 million. $46.4 million was received in contributions during the year, which is an increase of about $500,000 from the previous year. And while our return on investments were down about 3% net of fees, 92 new funds were started. What I love about this fact is it shows that even when things are hard, even when the economy is down, people chose to be generous. Of course, it would be great if we could see strong results every year, but that's the wonderful thing about our model, is that even when the economy is poor and times are low for market returns, ECF is still able to have a profound and growing impact on the communities we serve and that we all serve. One of the many organizations that we've been able to support in the new year is the New Canadians Health Centre, a group of medical professionals providing programs and services to enhance the health and well-being of refugees and newcomers to Canada. Earlier this year, myself and Joanne Curry, who is our Director of Grants, went to visit the health center and met Astrid Velasquez, who's their Executive Director, and she took us on an amazing tour. We invited her here today to share just a little bit about the great services they provide. So please join me in welcoming Astrid.
Thank you so much, Tina, for inviting me. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Astrid Velasquez, and I am a former refugee from Colombia. I came to Canada, to Edmonton, 20 years ago, luckily with my family. For the last 18 years, I had had the privilege of serving refugees, seeing them form new communities in Edmonton, supporting each other to settle successfully in their new city. 12 years ago, we had a dream, a community nonprofit health center for refugees in Edmonton, Edmonton being the only major city in Canada without a dedicated refugee health center. The work was hard. The advocacy process took us a decade. And when nobody believed in this initiative, the Edmonton Community Foundation did. After forming the Refugee Health Coalition in 2017, a group of community members, settlement organizations, academics, physicians, specialists, and others, the Edmonton Community Foundation funded us to have a coordinator. That was really what took things to the next level. We were able to reach the government levels, creating opportunities to put the last pieces together to open the health center. We opened our doors in August 31st, 2021. And again, the Edmonton Community Foundation supported us. They provided us bridge funding so we could start operating. Without this support, we wouldn't have been able to do it. We opened in the middle of a pandemic, trying to establish the center, and we were operating at the same time. We needed to take care of the backlog, everybody who wasn't able to flee due to COVID, and also the crisis in Afghanistan happened, bringing thousands of arrivals to our city. Edmonton is not a hub, meaning we are welcoming charter flights directly into our city, first time in migration history. Some of them go to different cities in Canada. Many of them stay with us. Currently, 25% of Edmontonians are newcomers. By 2050, it will be 50%. The NCHC is a multidisciplinary health center. We provide a one-stop shop for all medical needs, but not limited to the clinical piece only. We have health navigators, refugee health promoters, and mental health supports. We teach clients how to navigate the health system. We cover other aspects of social determinants of health. Refugees, we are not a burden. We are resilient, a community resilient, of people who cannot wait to give back to their new country. We just need the right resources and tools upon arrival. I would like to introduce you to Lam. He is a refugee from South Sudan. Living in a refugee camp for years, he dreamed of coming to a safe country to have a good life. Lam arrived to Edmonton less than a year ago. He was in at the NCHC, and we were able to provide a range of services to ensure his needs were met. Despite his physical limitation and with his new power wheelchair, Lam is smiling again. And he couldn't wait to start doing something for others. Lam is already volunteering, welcoming new arrivals at the airport. Lam speaks 6 languages, and he has a brilliant mind. He has really big plans of his new life in his safe country. One of our proudest moments are with the babies that are either come here as babies or they are born in Edmonton. First and second generations who are the future of our city. Being able to provide a safe, healthy environment so they can thrive as well as their parents. It is one of the most precious things that we do. On our first weeks after being open, we welcomed a charter flight from Afghanistan. We saw a mom with her newborn. Mom delivered her baby at 10 a.m. in Afghanistan and took her charter flight to come to Canada at 2 p.m. on the same day. She didn't want to leave her family behind, and she didn't want to miss the opportunity of being here, talking about resilience. For Lam, this mom and the baby, and all the other 2,000 refugees we have been able to serve at the NCHC, I was so happy that we finally have the center open and ready to take care of them. We will be forever grateful to the Edmonton Community Foundation, and we look forward to continue our partnership. And I also want to thank all of you because you are also part of the New Canadians Health Center. Thank you for your support.
Astrid, thank you for sharing what Joanne and I loved about when we came for the presentation and saw the space. I hope you all got a little bit of a taste of the amazing work that they're doing. And it is great that because of donors like you that are in this room, we were able to kickstart the funding that was able to provide them their work. It is an ECF tradition at our annual luncheon to use it as an opportunity to give back. And this year, we are encouraging donations to the New Canadian Health Center. You'll see that there are signs on your table that you can use that will take you to the ECF donate page. You can also leave a check if you'd like, and you can make it to the Edmonton Community Foundation, and we will make sure that all the funds donated today go to the New Canadians Health Center. It seems that the Wi-Fi in this room is not that great. So if we all use it right now, it might crash. So feel free to make your donation over the next hour and even later in the day. We will make sure it all gets to the New Canadians Health Center. ECF's ability to support organizations like the New Canadians Health Center is only possible because of a diverse set of donors, many of whom are in the room. The Generosity in Action booklet that's on your tables, it shows the thousands of ECF funds and fund holders who are committed to making a better city and a better world. Our ability to support vital causes is also thanks to our investment strategy and our solid investment results. Our annualized return since 1989 is 7.9%. That's not only helped ECF grow our funds that have been entrusted to us, but enabled us to give back more and more each and every year. In fact, ECF has been able to distribute more than $370 million into the community since its inception in 1989. That's almost $11 million per year for the past 34 years. And millions more will be distributed in the coming years. That is the power of endowment. It keeps on giving regardless of what's going on with the economy. Last week, I had the chance to attend the Community Foundations of Canada conference in Toronto. I had the chance to meet with about 600 peers from community foundations across the country. Not surprisingly, many of them asked me how I was feeling about the election results. And without fail, everybody who asked me about it had genuine concern, woe, and even pity. But that is not how I am feeling. As I approach my first year as the CEO of ECF, the only words that describe how I am feeling are positive. Excited, energetic, enthusiastic, and most of all, an overwhelming feeling of possibility. The more I learn about ECF, the more motivated I am by the tremendous opportunity and possibility for progress that the city can see and the role that ECF can play in making that happen. I have been welcomed as I started this new role by cards of encouragement from people like Sir Francis Price and Marguerite Tressler, as well as John and Avery Stobie. I've enjoyed lunch at the home of Scott Graham and Doug Stollery. I had a wonderful phone call, providing suggestions on how ECF could do better, the things that we could change, provided with sincerity and all goodwill from Brad and Andrea Guthrie, as well as many, many others. I have also been generously embraced by hundreds of peers in the charitable sector, whether that was through coffee, a phone call, an invitation to lunch, or just even an email. And they are all eager to help because they want me to learn about the issues and opportunities, and they genuinely are engaged in ensuring ECF's success. Because the more that we are successful, the more our community will be abundant. Maybe I am being naive, but I think we are more united than we are divided. And the one thing that is very clear to me from meetings with donors as well as our community partners is that whatever our background, whatever our political views, we all want a city where vulnerable people are taken care of, where children have opportunities to grow and thrive, where the sick are treated, where musicians and artists are contributing to a vibrant community, and our beautiful city stays beautiful for years to come. I recently heard a donor say to me, "When we come together, we can make real change." While my trust in government isn't always as strong as I would like it to be, notable exception of Lieutenant Governor who wasn't able to join us today, I have unwavering confidence in all of us that together we can really change our city. And I know ECF has a strong role to play. I recently heard a quote from Cindy Blackstock when describing how we should think about opportunity and challenges and possibilities. She said, "It's not a pie. That is, it's not something that's finite, that if someone gets more, other people get less. It's not a pie, it's a circle, and the circle can expand to all those who want to participate." Thank you for inviting me into the circle, and I look forward to growing it with you together. Expanding the circle is the perfect segue to our today's speaker. Irshad Manji, who is a professor and the founder of the Moral Courage College, which teaches people worldwide to turn contentious issues into constructive conversations and shared action. Its signature program, Diversity Without Division, equips businesses, schools, and community organizations to practice a uniquely unifying method of inclusion. African by birth, Canadian by citizenship, American by address, and international by reach, she says the only thing that can describe her, the only label that can describe her, is plural. I have been a fan of Irshad since I was first exposed to her about 5 years ago. I appreciate her practical, inclusive approach to dialogue that asks us to check our ego and really listen to people that we don't agree with, even if we don't change our minds and even if our views stay the same. Personally, I have thought about her words many times when I have been in the throes of a heightened, contentious conversation about an important topic. I've asked myself, do I want to win or do I want change? Because I am not going to bully and shame someone into changing. Please join me in welcoming Irshad to the stage.
Am I going to be getting a handheld mic, or can I just use Tina's? Yeah? Okay, very good. You see, ladies and gentlemen, unlike Tina, unlike Elisa, and unlike Astrid, I'm short. So I am not going to be behind this podium, if you don't mind. Well, good afternoon. What a pleasure. What a pleasure to be here. Astrid, I said this to you a few moments ago, but now I want to say it in front of everybody. Whatever your faith or lack of it, God bless you. Really. My family and I are refugees to this wonderful country. We fled civil war in Uganda in 1972. And I like to joke, but it isn't actually a joke, that when we landed on the precious soil of Canada, we were immediately given two things: peace and fleece. Both of which were urgent necessities. Tina, I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am for your tenure as CEO. I know that ECF has been an incredible shaper of life in Edmonton under the former CEO, and you are going to be building on that reputation and that impact. And if I may be so bold, you know, the strawberry shortcake that we've been served as dessert today is an amazing start to your tenure. It's true. I would not ascend the stage without having it first. I've been asked to say a little bit about the need for moral courage. And I'll get to what I mean by moral courage in a second. But by the end of whatever my talk is going to be today, I hope you'll see how much moral courage the Edmonton Community Foundation has exhibited simply in inviting me to be your keynote. Not because I think that I'm courageous. I actually don't think that at all. It's more that when you don't fit a ready-made mold, today, in our us against them times, you're immediately assumed to be on the other side. And, you know, Tina mentioned something in her formal remarks that I really want to pick up on. She said that she hopes and she believes that we are not nearly as divided as we're led to believe, and sometimes as we feel we are. And Tina, you said, maybe I'm naive about that. No, you're not, actually. No, you are not naive. You are rooted in what the research tells us. And here I'm referring to the research that comes out of an initiative from the University of Alberta that some of you may already know about. It's called Common Ground. And this research initiative shows through oodles of polling that people in Alberta are not monolithic, monolithically one party or monolithically another party. That actually most people in this province, rural and urban areas, have a mixture of beliefs. We are plurals, as you rightly referred to me, which means that we are all so much more than meets the eye. And in fact, we're all so much more than the way we vote. So why is it? Why is it that we feel so divided? What Common Ground has at least tentatively concluded is that it's not our ideologies or our system of convictions and beliefs that separates us. Instead, it's our identities. In other words, the labels that we put on one another, and sometimes that we take for ourselves. And the problem with labels, I kind of sort of wrote the book on that. The problem with labels is not that they are labels as such. The problem with labels is that they come with baggage. They are not neutral. And it's that baggage that society, popular culture, has put on any given label that then makes us believe, oh, you are fill in the blank, then you must also fill in the blank. And often, the must also is simply not true. But we don't know that or can't really get to understand that if all we're doing is assuming about one another based on the labels that we're giving one another. Rather than merely assume, we need to learn how to engage. And that sounds really simple. Turns out, it isn't so simple. One of the reasons it isn't so simple is the way we human beings are wired. You know, every single person in this room and beyond this room is born with a brain. Yes, even those whom you wouldn't necessarily attribute that to. Every single one of us is born with a brain that has a primitive region. And the primitive region of the brain is the home to the ego. Now, I don't mean the word ego in a mystical or self-helpy kind of way. Ego is actually a neurobiological function. It is a necessity. The ego's job is to keep us all alive. So that if I am stepping in front of an oncoming bus, stop me if I go there, huh? If I'm stepping in front of an oncoming bus, it is my ego that will say, get out of the way, or get ready to fight. So in times of mortal danger, the ego is our best friend. The good news, and the problem, is that the vast majority of our lives is not spent in mortal danger. Not in this part of the world, that's for sure. But the problem is that the ego is so primitive that it actually can't distinguish between mortal danger and mere discomfort. Now, we've had this part of the brain for eons, 80, 90,000 years, since our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. So why is it that today, when we tend to disagree with people's values or beliefs or politics, why is it that instead of just disagreeing, we race to disgust? There are reasons for this. And there are environmental reasons, by which I mean the culture in which we're all immersed. Social media, which thrives on hyper-emotionalism. Traditional media, newspapers, TV channels, radio stations, that can no longer make the kind of money they once did through mass advertising because, believe it or not, we ain't mass anymore. And so they've had to turn to a new business model. The business model of recruiting paid subscribers. And when you take money out of your bank account every month repeatedly, you don't do it because you want to be challenged. You don't do it because you want to be told, you're not thinking about this very well. You do it because you want to feel pleasure. And media outlets know that, which is why, even though the vast majority will not lie to us, vast majority will not lie to us, what they will do for the sake of revenue generation is they will frame even stories that are reported, not opinions, but stories that are reported in ways that won't offend most of their subscribers. It's called confirmation bias. These stories confirm our biases, which means that we're getting only part of the story. And then there is the issue of politics. And I don't mean merely partisan politics. I mean also the politics of the movements that we identify with. Reality is that we live in a time when big religion, organized religion, is on the downswing. But that doesn't mean we're any less religious. What it means is that politics has swooped in to fill that void, so that everything today is so easily politicized. Now here's the rub. This new politics, the politics of our movements, unlike old religion, this new religion doesn't preach grace or mercy or compassion. It preaches exactly the opposite. Slam dunk the other, because they are a mortal danger. As a very politically committed friend of mine once said, and it's a sort of a twist on the golden rule. You know, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, the new golden rule of the new politics is do unto others before they do unto you. So when you take all of this, how we're wired, and then the culture in which we swim, it's no wonder that our ego brains are on hyper alert. And this is why it's so easy, when we're being disagreed with, to fall for the ego's trick of believing that our very dignity, our very humanity is under attack. Much more often than not, it's not under attack. And that's why we've got to learn the skills of how to become less anxious and more open as we enter into conversations that may indeed become contentious. But you know, there's a truth in neuroscience. It's a very simple one, and it'll, I'm sure, cohere with much of your lived experience. And it is that the most reliable way to get a fair hearing is to give a fair hearing. Which is why it's got to start somewhere, engagement. And why not with all of you? Because you, by dint of being in this room, you are the leaders of this community that we call Edmonton. Now, I don't want to be naive about any of this. I understand that many of you truly, truly believe that in light of recent election results, that mortal danger is at hand. And you know, every once in a while, you might be right. But here's the point. You don't know who's worth engaging until you try. And when I say worth engaging, I don't mean let me change their mind. No, that's called playing the other. And if any of you has ever been played, you know that you're absolutely not going to change your mind for exactly that reason. So we've got to remember that sometimes we get in our own way of being understood, yeah? And that's why I want to leave you, for this portion of the talk, because we're going to follow it up with a conversation. I'm not going to speechify about the need for conversation. We'll have a conversation about it. But I want to leave you on this image, this picture. And it's a sketch in your mind's eye. Think about two teams on a playing field. They could be playing anything, but since we're in Edmonton, forget the field, let's talk about the rink, okay? Two teams, and they're at each other. And one of them is wearing a jersey or jerseys with the words, less powerful. And the other is wearing
jerseys with the word powerful. And they want change. Each of these teams wants change. So what do? They fight it out. And it turns out that because of the way they fight it out, there is change. Because now, Team Powerful wears the jersey less powerful. And those who once wore the jersey less powerful now bear the uniform powerful. So yeah, that's change, all right. You know what it's not? Progress. It's not transformation. Because what hasn't changed is the game. It's the same game of us against them. Tina, you mentioned a donor who told you how happy they are to be working with the Edmonton Community Foundation for real change. I'm so glad to hear that. Because the kind of change I've just described is not real change. And I know you enough to know you are actually, you and your team, which I have had the utmost pleasure to be working with over the last few months as we planned my visit to Edmonton, you and your team are not about change at all. You and your team are about transformation. And I cannot wait to see what happens. Thank you again for your courage. Thank you, everybody.
So we are going to do something different. We are going to have some Q&A. So I have questions that I have put together. I have gone down the rabbit hole of rereading Irshad's book and watching lots of her videos, so I'm pretty familiar with what she's talked about over the last little while.
Conversation.
Yeah, and again, I'll just go back to your story of your own growth.
Yep.
Because I think, again, your own position by listening to others helped you change how you behaved.
That's exactly
Do you
right.
want to share a little bit about what the imam said to you?
Yeah, so funnily enough, funnily, given my tendency back then to turn discussions into debates, I received an invitation to debate whether, in fact, Islam needs reform, to debate this on Al Jazeera International. And I already knew by then that that would have been too easy for me. And it's, again, part of what my problem was, that, I had this proclivity to just stick to what I know and decide that that's all I need to know. So you would think, folks, that in order to grow, I would have politely declined the invitation to do a debate. But instead, I accepted that invitation, not because I couldn't help myself, no, but because I wanted to test myself. Since this was meant to be a debate, could I turn it into a discussion? And over the course of a terrifying TV hour, that's exactly what I managed to do by reducing my own emotional defenses. And what happened afterwards blew me away. I was approached by a number of the imams, the Muslim ministers, in that live audience. And they said to me, we support a lot of what you're advocating. And folks, I had been dying to hear this. For 10 years of being a religious reform activist, I had never heard this. And so I asked them, why now? And using their own words, they said, because tonight you showed some humility. And we know that by letting you know we support you, we're not going to be feeding your ego. And in fact, 2 months after that, a subset of those imams got in touch to ask if I would mentor them in how to bring these messages of reform to their own congregations. And what I learned from that entire experience, which, by the way, social science research backs up, is that listening does not need to translate into losing. Quite the opposite. Listening is actually a way of treating your other with the respect that they need to feel in order for you to get a fair hearing from them. Yeah.
You talked about it quite a bit. We'll change gears. You talked about it a little bit when you were speaking about pluralism and what it means to be a plural. Can you give us your definition of that and why it is important in today's conversations, particularly around EDI?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm a plural. And by the way, not to label you, because I think that this is actually an anti-label, each of us is a plural. And I simply mean that we are all so much more than meets the eye. Now, Tina, again, we live in a time when it's considered progressive to look at people like you and me and say, oh, those two are women of color. They must be oppressed. They must be marginalized. And so, on their behalf, either someone from their community, other women of color, will decide what we must think in order to be authentic, or as a white person, I will be their ally by presuming that I need to stand up for them whenever I hear something that offends me, the white person. All of this is to say that the two people in this dynamic who are never engaged with are you and me. We're not just women of color. Sure, factually speaking, we are that, but we are so much more. We're individuals in our own right. And your experiences will, by necessity, differ from mine. And even if, Tina, we have the same experiences in any given situation, how it impacts you may very well differ from how it impacts me. And I can tell you, and I'll bet this will resonate, because we all come from families, right? Those of us who have siblings, we hear the same conversations at home. We see the same behavior among our parents at home. And yet, all of those things will mean that each of us in the family will interpret those experiences in different ways. The violence with which I grew up at home has very much landed differently with my two sisters and me. It made me spunky. It did not make my other two sisters spunky at all. But my point is that even in the confines of the most intimate situations, i.e., the family, we are not the same. So to respect people is to engage people rather than assume about them. Incidentally, if I may just say one other thing about this. You and I are wearing glasses. Respect comes from the Latin respectate. It means to look again. So that my first impression of you, because maybe my ego brain is saying, Irshad, you need to make sense about, of everything that's around you right now, because you need to know who's a threat and who's not, right? My first impression of you may very well be your labels. But if I allow it to be my final impression of you, I haven't respected you at all. Because all I've done is assumed. And I think the worth of the human being and the quirk of the individual is discovered when we engage.
Absolutely. Related to that, discovering more about people, you've said that we spend a lot of our time being socialized to think that we can only ask questions that make people comfortable. And we have to avoid things that might cause discomfort. Why do you think that's a problem? What problem do you think that's causing for us today?
I think I can answer that question with maybe an uncomfortable question of my own. How the hell do we grow unless we feel a little bit of discomfort? And that's why, Tina, my credo as an educator is, I'm not here to help you feel safe. I'm here to help you feel safe in your discomfort. That is where the learning happens, when we stretch ourselves.
So, but what does it mean to be safe in your discomfort?
It means that I am feeling challenged right now, I'm being disagreed with right now, and I'm not going to die as a result. So I'm good with that. I'll be just fine, ego. Thank you, but I don't need an overprotective parent right now. I need the mental bandwidth, so stop that noise, ego. I need the mental bandwidth to hear what my so-called other is trying to tell me. Because maybe, just maybe, they have something to teach me before I have something to teach them. And by the way, naive, right? Unless you remember that the way to get a fair hearing from them is to give a fair hearing to them. So you see, none of this is about being nicety nice. Hey, nice is good, don't get me wrong. I'm still Canadian, okay? Nice is good, right? But the real point here is that if you have a view about something that you are desperately passionate about, and you believe that the world, more of the world, needs to take that view seriously, then it is in your enlightened self-interest to give a fair hearing. Make yourself uncomfortable. Indeed, even offend yourself. Precisely because when you do that, you're lowering emotional defenses, you're creating trust, and when you create trust, you now have the foundation on which differences can be constructively examined. So you're actually winding up doing two things when you make yourself uncomfortable, when you make yourself unsafe in the way that we've just described. You're using your power, and we all have power. It's called the ego. You're using your power to create the culture of the conversation, to set the norms of the conversation. Namely, we're going to grow in this conversation.
Yeah, but it's so hard.
Oh, sure it's hard. Sure it's hard, and your point is what?
So think about that. How, like, if politics is now religion,
Yep.
and that is what's dividing people, how does this actually look? How does this work? And as, we know we are a province that's almost 50-50.
Yep.
How does this actually work when
Yep.
you're approaching a conversation with someone that you just think, I just don't agree with you?
Right. So there are two ways to answer this question. And I'm going to answer it in the way that I most want to, but then I'm going to invite you, Tina, since you have been, part of the conversations that I've been having with, foundation employees, community groups, and members of the general public last night, I want you to tell this audience some of what you've learned about the skills of moral courage. But before we go there, actually no, let's go there first, and then I'll wrap it up.
So I will say the one that I really am trying to think about is listen to learn. Not just to understand, but to learn. And then also, when I am talking to someone, because again, I firmly believe in that idea, would a reasonable, rational person behave this way? So when there is something that I don't understand or I disagree with, asking the question of the person, what do you...
A sincere question, not a
yes.
judgy one.
What is it about your position that I don't understand? Help me learn.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in a house that's divided politically. Whatever it is, my husband and I will probably vote differently, and we won't vote consistently. So I know he's not crazy. I married him. How
he's
can
crazy
I,
about you.
Well, maybe
so
he is crazy for marrying me. But I do think about practicing those lessons. So yes.
That's right. And those lessons, best to start at home, actually, right? With people you more or less trust. And really get good at turning these skills into habits. Because the beauty of habits is that they're no-brainers. That's what makes them habits, which means that you have disarmed your ego brain that wants you to not change. By practicing the skill of asking the question, can you help me understand what I might be missing about where you're coming from? Just get into the habit of asking that question and watch what happens in the conversation. Now, I want to answer your question about the 50-50 and how do you navigate that. And I'm going to start very clearly and simply. Don't fall for the trap or fall into the trap of believing that because this province, for now, is a two-party system, that we must be divided as people. See, the system is, in fact, framing our choices for us. I'm enough of a geek to have watched the Alberta leaders' debate, party leaders' debate, during the election campaign. Not only because I knew I was coming here, but also because this is what I do for a living, right? I need to be on top of case studies. And it has been remarked that, only the UCP and only the NDP were represented on that platform. When the reality is that Alberta has more parties than those two. There's the Alberta Party, there's the Green Party, and probably other parties that I just don't know about. And I understand why only, the leaders of these two parties were platformed, because they're the only ones that have representation in the legislature. But I say that's BS, okay? I'm calling that out as BS because, again, if an election is about choices, and if in fact we have more choices than just these two, then people need to know about more than just those two choices. Now, here's the thing, Tina. Nobody watches the leaders' debates anyway, right? So I'm not for a moment saying that, people are glued to their computer screen, they're watching this live stream. It's like, oh, just these two? Okay, now I know I have to decide between these two. No, that's not where I'm going with this at all. It's more that media then frame so much of what people consume as that narrow a choice. And ultimately, therefore, folks, it's up to us to do the work of informing ourselves of why we have more choices than either or. That's why I don't buy the argument that whoever the new government is, whoever it's composed of, will decide what the fate of this province is. If that's the assumption we're making, we're putting way more power in the hands of politicians than they deserve. The ECF knows, because this is what you live, breathe, and do day in and day out, that the life of this city is the people of this city. And people are the ones who get things done, not the system.
We are almost at the close, so one last quick question, hot question.
Yeah.
What, if you want to give us a quick tip, if we want to combat polarization, what can we do?
Quick tip.
Because we're short on time.
I hear you, and I'm short too, so I get it. Make an effort to start a conversation with someone you profoundly disagree with on something that you are profoundly passionate about. And one way of starting that conversation is to actually create common ground rather than merely seek it. And the way you create common ground, quite simply, is to say, Tina, I know that you and I are going to disagree about this, but I also know that you are so much more than just this particular issue or just this particular disagreement, which is why I have no right to judge who you are. Can you remember the same about me? And when you invite the person to remember the same about you, you're achieving two things at once. First, you are reminding them that that we are, in fact, more, we have, both of us, more agency than we probably give ourselves credit for, okay? So I'm asking you to do something, but I'm gonna go first in that department. So I'm setting the example, right? And in that way, you are showing the kind of respect that lowers those emotional defenses right away. The one thing that we human beings fear more than death itself is judgment. And so if you can reassure someone that you're not there to dispense judgment, just letting them know that will work a minor miracle in their ability to hear you and your ability to hear them. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Irshad, for a great talk. Thank you for helping us learn so many ways to find common ground. That is it for our event. Please remember to take home your Generosity in Action booklets at your tables. The flowers at your table are also available for you to take home too. There's no way that we're selecting who gets them, so you can have a discussion about it and resolve it not in conflict. Before you leave, the photographer is going to come up because this is such a big and beautiful room, and we're going to take a picture of everyone with the room with myself and Irshad. So hang on for 1 minute.
Please stay in your seats, everyone.